Hey, this is Ramon, and the channel is Alpha 4. That's designation Alpha 4 IV. And welcome to my Bible study series. We will be doing Genesis chapter 34, Dinah. And today we will be reading out of the New King James Version. So, I hope you enjoy it. Every week, to avoid copyright, every week we go out of a different Bible translation. And this week is the New King James Version. So I hope you enjoy, and let's begin. First off, I've been having sound issues, so I just ordered a new mic, and I'm finally going to get a mic system with a power supply and everything like that. It's going to take me a little while to get that. So I'm back to the headset until I get all the new equipment. Number two, you might notice I have a bit more of a tan. I went out for a very long hike, so I'm a little exhausted. So that might affect the performance a little bit of this video. Also, this video is going to be long. The notes when I got done doing my research is about 7 pages. My usual videos are about 3. So this is going to be twice as long as my average video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do some hard cuts in this one. And also I also begin this one with an extra note. Texas, Whataburger. Alright. So the first note is, I don't know where to put this note, but I keep forgetting to say this. These are songs. They're chants. And follow not only the narrative conventions, but also the poetic and lyrical conventions of their time. These would be sung while being recited, not just read. The oral traditions would pass this along, well, more so as a lullaby is passed on nowadays, especially a family one. This is true for most of the Bible, even the Gospels, which were also originally meant to be sung, not read. Monks still do this today in the Latin and the Greek, but this is also true of most ancient epics, including everything from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Odyssey. All of these were poems. This is why in the Bible it will say that people had tambourines or lyres with them, and that when they would say the term or the phrase sung his praise, this wasn't just rhetorical or a writing convention. They were actually singing. You will actually see breaks in the text where they actually have hymn lyrics or song lyrics. And there's even a book called The Song of Songs. It's called The Song of Songs because it's supposed to be the best song in the Bible. Get it? So sometimes when a word or a phrase or an idea doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense because it's not trying to make sense in a textbook kind of way or even in a literary kind of way. It's trying to make the song, the lyric, sound right. If you look up information about how the Torah is supposed to be recited and sung, you will see them explain how certain words or phrases or sentences are just repeated, and this is so that way the song can have a certain rhythm or a certain sound. Okay, so that's important to note. A lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people are like, well, why is this one word, like, it would be easier another way? No, it's originally a song, so it follows lyrical conventions as well as the literary conventions of that time. It's just something important to note. All right, so now let's go with the summary. So Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, was raped by Shechem, a Hivite prince in the land of Canaan. He was the son of a man named Hamor, and Hamor, as his father, then negotiated with Jacob for Dinah's hand in marriage to Shechem. But Dinah's brothers were enraged at the whole event. Even Shechem tries to make things right by offering an exorbitant, overestimated bride price. So the sons of Jacob gave their opinion on the marriage. They said that they would consent if and only if all the men of Hamor's tribe agreed to immediate circumcision. Hamor and Shechem were well pleased with this proposal and eagerly agreed. Hamor and Shechem then went about the work of convincing their people to consent to and to participate in this covenant. Levi and Simeon, with their men, in an act like that of the Achaeoi, or the Achaeans, that is the Greeks, at Troy, sacked the city, killed all the men, as the men of that city were still healing from their wounds of circumcision. And then the brothers took back their sister from the now slain house of Hamor and Shechem. Jacob then rebuked the brothers for their actions, explaining that they had made all of Israel an enemy of the native Hivites, that is, the indigenous people of Canaan, and of the Perizzites, of the Perizzites, that is, the rural persons of Canaan, for all time. But the brothers rejected the rebuking. And when it comes to the Old Testament, and by that I mean the Hebrew Bible, I much prefer translations from the Hebrew than from the Greek, as the Hebrew has less Christian bias and fewer instances of interpolation. That is, words that are inserted to help a verse make sense in English. For instance, in the Hebrew, this story is not so much about rape as it is about seduction, family honor, property rights, and keeping a distinct cultural identity. From that perspective, this is a tale detailing one ethnic and political complication one would encounter during the pursuit of keeping a tribe or a family pure. As there are historical aspects to this chapter, it is important to state that this chapter is a rhetorical polemic against intermarriage, specifically against marriage between a Jewish woman and the Hivite Canaanites. This story is meant to demonstrate how Jacob, that is Israel, cannot control the behavior of his sons, an important metaphor going forward when dealing with the actions of the tribes of Israel versus the actions of Israel as a state. This has further implications when talking about individuals and their actions versus the ideals of the religion they belong to. Yet this story does reflect some truth in actual history. The tribes of Simeon and Levi resided near territory controlled by the city of Shechem, while narratively the rift in the family of Israel that began here will express itself with how the brothers treat their younger brother Joseph in a following narrative. All right, now let's get on to the notes. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And that was verse 1. From a modern perspective, this passage could be seen as victim blaming, as the story could only progress by Dinah wanting to visit her female friends among the Hivite Canaanites, by venturing away from her father's house without her brothers to protect her. She was vulnerable and compromised. Interestingly enough, there is no historical record, not even in the later Hebrewic records, of Judges and Joshua, of early Israelites ever sacking Shechem by force, in conquest or otherwise, making this story more a warning than an historical event. Then we get to verse number 2. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. Now, as I said, I prefer the Hebrew to the Greek. The English is based on the Greek, and the Greek actually says, lay with her by force. And this leaves less ambiguity about the crime in question than the original Hebrew does. The actual action or offending word here is that Shechem humbled Dinah. The word in the actual Hebrew is humbled. This is an unclear statement, even in the original ancient Hebrew that it was written in. The crime here is more an incident of non-marital sex than it is what we would understand as rape today. For her consent, or lack thereof, would not have even been understood to the original intended audience. As to their understanding, the crime was committed against her father and the brothers. Hence, they are the ones who seek revenge. It was their honor that was violated here. From their ancient culture's perspective. While the real Shechem, not the character, was actually a city near the Israeli border. The character of Shechem in this chapter is meant to be an example of a ruler who was unable to rule his own passions. The word Hivite is not a Semitic word, but a Greek loanword to designate the non-Semitic people of Palestine. And we're going to go with verse 3. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So in my note, I say, hence the story goes a long way to build up the good characteristics of Shechem, a minor player in the larger narrative, which in modern context, he would simply be the villain of the story. While some translations use the word love, to the Christian mind, what is being expressed here is sinful lust. Then we get to verse 7. And the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved and very angry, because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by laying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. The phrase committed an outrage in Israel was an idiom that means a horrific offense had taken place. This is not necessarily an anachronism, but more likely a writing convention by the author who first wrote this down, using a colloquialism to get a point across to his contemporary audience. To the ancient audience, it was hospitality laws that were violated here by both Shechem and the sons of Jacob, Levi and Simeon. A concept that is lost when telling this story to a modern audience. Then we get to verses 11 and 12. And again, this is out of the New King James Version. Then Shechem said to her father and her brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife. It's important to note here that actual Assyrian law during this time would have required a rapist to marry his victim, to pay her father a hefty fine, and for the rapist to forfeit the right of divorce. Which all that sounds horrific. While biblical law from a slightly later period, that from Deuteronomy 22 verses 28 through 29, Genesis 27 and Genesis 24 and Genesis 27, Israelites were forbidden to marry the indigenous people of Canaan, meaning that even if all was consensual and on the up and up, all would have ended up the same way, but with the possible addition of Dinah being stoned or put in exile. So, verses 13 through 18. But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem, and Hamor, his father, and Hamor, his father, and spoke deceitfully, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. And they said to them, We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition we will consent to you, if you will become as we are. If every male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. Now, it's important to note that in here it says, we will consent, meaning the brothers will consent to the act, not the wives or the daughters. So, you just got to understand the culture that is being talked about here. So, this misuse of the sacred act of circumcision would have been viewed as an outrage by the original intended audience. Ironically, in Josiah, chapter 9, verses 3 through 15, it is the Hivites that will deceive the Hebrews. The language of this chapter clearly betrays that it is a later addition to the narrative than the other chapters of Genesis. This negotiation was not just about Dinah. It was to allow marriage between the Israelites and the Hivites, that is, the indigenous tribes of Canaan. Canaan. In actuality, circumcision was not such a rare thing in the ancient Middle East. Native Egyptians, the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Amorites all practiced circumcision. So this proposal is not as extreme as it may seem to some modern readers today. Then we get to verse 21. These men are at peace with us. Therefore let them dwell in the land and trade in it. For indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Now this verse that would have seemed innocent to us and maybe even a worthy cause of Hamor after the crime of Shechem, this would have actually been read as a threat made by Hamor to the people of Israel who were hearing this when the story was being told, as this action would mean assimilation and the loss of their distinct identity. Then we get to verse 23. Will not their livestock, their property, and every animal of theirs be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. Yet Hamor and Shechem have their own reasons to want and pursue unity between the family tribes other than Dinah. Namely, what they want is Jacob's cattle. Then we get to verse 24. And all who went out of the gate of his city heeded Hamor and Shechem his son. Every male was circumcised. All who went out of the gate of his city. It is unclear whether this tactic is supposed to be looked at as underhanded and sneaky or as innovative and cunning. Then we get to verse 26. And they killed Hamor and Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went out. This tactic puts this story more near the level of the Trojan horse than, say, the story of Lydda or Cassandra. Then we get to verses 27 through 29. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, and their donkeys, what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth. All their little ones and their wives they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. It is unclear in the original Hebrew just who is doing the plundering, so sometimes the word other is added by scribes for the reader's sake. Though noted as an addition, yet this addition has made it through to some Greek manuscripts with no such notation, by less careful Christian scribes, and thus changes the story in the English. Biblical just war theory states that the righteous warrior abstains from plunder. For proof of this, see Deuteronomy chapter 13, verses 13 through 19, 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 17 through 26, and Esther chapters 9, 15, and 16. Then we get to chapter 30. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I." In pre-money trade societies, your reputation was more important than gold. I almost went with the pun, but I chose not to. By violating a well-known pact, Simeon and Levi had now labeled the whole family, that is, the tribe of Israel, as untrustworthy. This would have been a major deal, and the stakes regularly understood by the original intended audience of nomadic traders and herdsmen. Part of this story's inclusion in the canon is to explain to the Hebrew Israelites why the tribes of Simeon and Levi were seemingly punished. One by being absorbed by another tribe, the other by being denied property rights. Worse still, the Levi tribe will eventually be lost altogether, hence the emergence of the rabbinical system. Then we get to the final verse of this chapter in this reading. Verse 31. But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a harlot?" I much prefer the Hebrew, which was, "Should he treat her like a whore?" It just makes more sense. Ties everything together better. The Hebrew reading of this verse ties the story together better than from the Greek. And it makes it clear that rape in this story does not mean what we mean when we say that word in our current day. By taking the law into their own hands and seeking vengeance, not justice, and here I put Jewish justice, nor forgiveness, and there I put Christian forgiveness, the punishment doled out did not fit the crime. The two brothers crossed a line into villainhood by abducting and enslaving women and children innocent of the crime committed against their sister. Thus, they multiplied the crime and did not correct the wrong done? This final question is later answered in Genesis chapter 49, verses 5 through 7, and then later at John chapter 4, verse 11. Okay, so that was the video. Please comment, subscribe, like, and share this video. I hope more people are watching the Bible videos, because I have picked up my game on these videos. I have improved the format, and I am covering more relevant material. Well, before I was just more kind of recapping. I'd like to have some conversations with you guys. A lot of atheists have a lot of questions about the Bible from that one video I made to them. So ask some questions, man. Just keep it relevant to the subject at hand. Like, just whatever is about that chapter, keep it to the chapter. Okay? Any Muslims who are watching this, any of my Muslim friends, ask some questions about what we're reading, just like I do of the Quran. Feel free. I'll gladly ask. Just, again, keep it on the topic at hand. Try to keep it within the context of the chapter. Obviously, as the conversation progresses, we can go other places, but at least the initial comment, have it be about the chapter. And anyone else who wants to comment or ask questions or share ideas, I mean, I would love to hear new ideas. Yes, I know a lot of stuff on this, but I don't know everything. And if you have an idea or a take or an understanding of this that I did not express, or if your rabbi or your priest or your pastor has told you something that you think I'm missing, please express it in the video, in the comments down below. I would love to turn this into a dialogue. Talk to you all later. Peace.